Lights, camera, action.
Well, hello there.
Hello.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Jon.
And I am Emily.
And today we're going to be talking about The Fugitive, a new movie to us, which I'm really excited to dig into.
It was so good.
It was really good. Last week we talked about Wreck-It Ralph, which was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that movie. It's one of my favorites. And I thought it was a really good episode. So if you didn't listen to that, go back and listen to it. And if you haven't seen it, what are you doing with your life? Go watch Wreck-It Ralph. But anyways, we are here today to talk about The Fugitive, and I think it's time to get going.
Alrighty. Well, The Fugitive was released on August 6th of 1993. It was directed by Andrew Davis. It is starring Harrison Ford, Tommy Lee Jones, Selah Ward, Joe Pantoliano, Julianne Moore, Andreas Katsoulis, I think is how you say it.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine, truthfully.
Jane Lynch, Thomas Mills Wood, and again, I'm probably going to butcher this name, Jeroen Krab, I think is how you say it.
There you go.
It was distributed by Warner Bros. And it has a runtime of 2 hours and 10 minutes. It is rated PG-13. Its budget was $44 million, and the box office total was $370 million.
Okay, very nice. I was just looking here because I'm not really familiar with Andrew Davis's work, so I was curious if he had done any other movies that either of us would be familiar with. And there's truly not a lot. But there is one like massive movie that I think everybody knows.
Okay.
He directed Holes.
Really?
He did, yes, which is really cool. There's really not a whole lot other than that. I mean, he's done plenty of movies. The only other one that people might recognize is Code of Silence from 1985, only because it's a Chuck Norris movie. But
yeah, I wouldn't know it.
Yeah. Anyways.
Holes was one of my favorite books when I was in school.
I have never actually read that book.
Oh, so good.
I've been told that it's very good.
Movie's good too.
Yeah. All right. Anyways.
All right. Well, I'm going to dive into some fun facts. I found a lot of really interesting stuff, so I'm excited.
Okay.
So, first one I thought was really cool. Well, I guess my first two kind of go together. So first, the train crash was filmed in a single take using a real train with the engine removed. The bus was just placed in the path of the oncoming train to create the impact. So I wouldn't have guessed that they used a real train. I mean, it looks real, but
Yeah.
I just would have figured that they would have used miniatures. But they actually said that using miniatures, like with all the special effects involved and everything, it was going to end up being a little more expensive.
Really?
So they were like, well, let's just do it for real. So
That's crazy. I wouldn't have guessed that. That is super cool, though. And, I mean, truthfully, I agree with you 100%. When I saw the train crash in the movie, I was like, oh, man, they did miniatures. It looks great. They did really good work. But to find out that they did it for real, like they just legitimately wrecked a train, derailed it and everything, is crazy. But it's super, super cool. I mean, obviously it looks good. It looks good because it's real.
right. And then also on that same note, the wrecked train and the bus remain a tourist attraction in Dillsboro, North Carolina. So you can go to Dillsboro and just see like exactly as it was left.
Yeah.
The train and bus crash, which is super cool.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like I don't know, like it seems kind of odd to say, all right, let's just leave it, make money off of it. But at the same time too, like you're going to pay to get all that stuff removed, and you have to, I'm sure like a dumping fee and, all that good stuff. And so like, okay, whatever, like let's just leave it, and people can come back here and be like, wow, this is where Harrison Ford walked. This is where Tommy Lee Jones was and all that stuff. So it's cool. I never would have guessed that they would turn that into a tourist attraction.
Yeah, for sure.
It's cool, though.
My next fact is that Harrison Ford actually damaged his ligaments while filming the whole like crash and escape scene.
Oh, really?
And he refused surgery so that his character would keep limping.
That sounds very much like Harrison Ford. That's awesome. But that's why I love
crazy.
him. He's such a great actor.
He is. Okay, I've got a couple casting details for you.
Okay.
My first one is that Gene Hackman and Jon Voight were considered to play Sam Gerard. And also, as far as Richard Kimble goes, there were quite a few that I found.
Okay, before we get there.
Sorry, go ahead.
So Sam Gerard, okay, I'm sure Jon Voight or Gene Hackman would have done a great job, but this movie's just not the same without Tommy Lee Jones as Sam Gerard. I love Tommy Lee Jones. He's another actor that just, I've never seen him in something that's not good. Like he's always got just impeccable comedic timing with just that dry pan, satiric delivery. Like his delivery on lines like that, where he's like, they're not necessarily 100% intended to be comedic, but he can deliver it in a way that's like, it doesn't take away from the scene. He's an expert. It's phenomenal. I really enjoy him, but he's also got a very special and unique attitude that I guess kind of demands like a seriousness, but I don't know. Tommy Lee Jones is very enjoyable. I love him. I love him in this movie. So I'm very glad that they went that way. I would say I'd probably want to see Jon Voight in it before Gene Hackman. Not that either of them would do bad, but I enjoy Jon Voight. But anyways, I thought those were interesting casting alternatives.
Yeah, for sure. So back to Richard Kimble. There were quite a few actors that were considered to play his role. So,
which obviously Richard Kimble is played by Harrison Ford in the movie.
Yes.
He's the main character of the film. So,
right. So the first choice was actually Kevin Costner. And he was actually even in contention to direct too, but he ended up dropping out for a different project. And then Nick Nolte was considered after him, but declined because he felt like he was too old for action films.
Which, fun fact, Harrison Ford is only 1 year younger
than
Nick Nolte.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
And then a few others that were considered in addition to Harrison Ford were Alec Baldwin, Michael Douglas, Andy Garcia, Mel Gibson, and Dennis Quaid.
Those were all solid picks.
I would agree.
I mean, I think any one of them would have done great, but I love to see Harrison Ford in this.
So my next fact is that the scene where Richard Kimble is running through the St. Patrick's Day parade, that was actually not scripted. It was kind of a thing that was decided on later by the director, because Andrew Davis, who directed it, is like a Chicago native, and he really wanted to capture the parade, and he was granted permission from the mayor's office to film the day of the parade. But the entire sequence was shot with a handheld Steadicam, and Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones just went out into the crowd and did their thing, and the camera operators were just running around trying to keep up. But Harrison Ford said that since his character was keeping a low profile, it meant that he didn't stand out much, and he lasted several minutes in the crowd before he was actually recognized.
Really?
Yes.
That's cool. Yeah, that whole thing, I've actually got a lot of details to add to that when we get to production details, but I couldn't hardly believe that when we were doing research that they shot in the actual St. Patrick's Day parade, that it wasn't just they hired actors and all this stuff. This was the actual Chicago St. Patrick's Day parade. I thought, man, that's awesome. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah, I think so too. So originally, Julianne Moore's character had a bigger role in the film. So for those of you who don't know, she plays like the nurse that's at the hospital later on in the movie.
It's kind of towards the end of the film. She's the one who recognizes. Well, we never actually fully know if she recognizes Dr. Kimble.
She just ends up calling security on him.
Yes, right.
So Richard Kimble was actually originally scripted to have sought her out for help and then eventually fall for her. But these scenes were filmed, but they ended up getting deleted from the final cut, and that's why her name is still credited as one of the main stars of the movie.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting. I'm glad that they cut that and dropped it.
Me too. I feel like I don't think a love story would flow well since he just lost his wife.
Right. I'm honestly, to tell you the truth, I'm super glad that they didn't go that route. As I was watching it, I kind of felt like, okay, when's it going to happen? I just felt like it was going to happen at some point, that he was going to take on a lover or something to that effect, that there was going to be a love interest that came along. And it just kind of, I don't know, felt like a trope of the era maybe, or of the genre, so to speak. And I am so glad that it didn't happen. Because as you said, like it would detract from the story, the overall point. It'd feel unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like he is a man solely focused on clearing his name and proving that, like, no, I loved my wife. I loved her so much. I could never do this to her. And I have been wrongly convicted and imprisoned, and I'm not going to stand for this, and I'm going to prove the truth. And so, anyways, I'm glad that it was a man on a mission rather than like a man on the run and like falls into the arms of a woman and, like all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So my next fact is that Andrew Davis said that Tommy Lee Jones originally argued that his character would not fire after Kimble inside a crowded building like the courthouse. And this ended up even causing a brief delay in filming. But Andrew Davis finally convinced Jones to do it as scripted. But he just, said like his character would have been concerned for the like well-being of innocent people around him. But he ended up losing that argument, obviously.
Yeah, I've got to say I have to agree with Tommy Lee Jones on this one. It's whatever. Like, it's not a big deal. It's ultimately like a minor detail.
Right.
But Sam Gerard is a smart guy. And for somebody who's fighting so hard to get him, he wouldn't just shoot to kill just because. You know what I mean? Like, that's not him. That's not his character. And sure, he's desperate. Like, he's been fighting so hard, and that's the closest he had been up to that point. But that's just not his character.
Yeah. Next, according to the DVD commentary, the scene where the Chicago police are interrogating Richard Kimble at the beginning of the movie was improvised. So Harrison Ford had no idea what questions he would be asked.
Oh, really? I like that they did that.
Yeah,
That
me too.
Keeps it authentic.
Yeah, for sure. Next, so I had never heard of this actor before. I looked up movies that he's been in. The only one that I know is Les Mis. But Richard Jordan, have you heard of that actor? Okay. So he was actually originally cast as Dr. Nichols, and he actually filmed some scenes with Harrison Ford before he ended up becoming ill and had to drop out of the picture. And sadly, he passed away the same year this film was released.
Yeah, it was actually 3 weeks before the movie released. He got a brain tumor and passed away. Yeah.
So these scenes had to be reshot with, obviously, the man who plays Dr. Nichols now. That's the name I butchered earlier. Jeroen Crab, I think is how you say it. But if you look closely at his first scene, so Dr. Nichols' first scene,
right,
Harrison Ford's beard looks different because he ended up having to regrow it for the reshoot.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
This was the first American movie shown in Chinese theaters in over 40 years. And the audiences accustomed to local movies were like blown away when they saw it, and it ended up becoming a huge hit in China.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That is really cool. That's crazy.
There was not enough room for the cameraman to be inside the helicopter with Tommy Lee Jones in the helicopter scene.
Yeah.
He had to be strapped to the outside of the chopper
Oh my gosh.
in order to get clean footage. Can you imagine being strapped to the outside of a
no.
helicopter to video it?
He better have got paid well.
Yeah, it's crazy. So going back to Julianne Moore, the nurse, her role in this movie ended up landing her in an interview with Steven Spielberg, who later cast her in The Lost World Jurassic Park.
Yes.
So it's all thanks to her role here.
That's very cool. When we were watching this for the first time, both you and I were like, who is that? Like, we know her, but we couldn't quite place our finger on it. We eventually figured out that it was The Lost World, but that's very cool.
And my last fact is that so this movie is actually based on a television series that was called The Fugitive. It was, I don't know if it only ran in 1963 or if it started in 1963, but it was a show in the 60s. So Richard Kimble was played by an actor named David Jansen.
Wow.
How did I misread David? I don't know.
David.
So anyways, his mother, so David Jansen's mother, her name's Bernice, is actually an extra in the courtroom scene in the movie. So you can spot her behind Harrison Ford's head while they play the 911 call. And when he is declared guilty, she's like whispering with another woman or something like that. But just a little
cool.
tie in there.
Yeah, very nice.
So yeah, that's all I got.
Okay. Well, I have a handful of items here. One of the things that, I'll just start from the top. So according to Harrison Ford in a 2023 interview with James Hibbard of The Hollywood Reporter, he pursued the role of Richard Kimble in The Fugitive in part due to his preference for playing characters dissimilar to himself. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. Like, kind of an interesting comment, but more interesting than that, he went on to say that he also really wanted to grow a beard because Warner Bros. Chairman Robert A. Daly would not allow Harrison Ford to grow facial hair in any of his movies because he said, quote, "I'm paying for Harrison Ford's face." So he wanted him unobstructed and, clean shaven and all that stuff, which I get, but that's like, I found that super funny that was kind of like his penultimate statement in the interview was that he really just wanted to stick it to Warner Bros. And grow a beard for a movie because that's the most Harrison Ford thing ever. So I think that's hilarious and I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Filming began in February 1993 and wrapped in May. Filming locations include Bryson City and Dillsboro, North Carolina, Blount County, Tennessee, and Chicago. Some specific on-site locations include Harris Regional Hospital in Silva, I think, North Carolina, the Chio Dam, I think that's how you say it, Chio Dam in Deals Gap, North Carolina, what kind of name is that for a city? And then the Chicago City Hall, obviously in Chicago. Also, I know you kind of touched on filming in Chicago and whatnot. I'm not sure if there was maybe some conflicting information there, but Andrew Davis actually did not want to film in Chicago at all.
Oh.
He was very opposed to it, but Harrison Ford is the one who convinced him because Harrison Ford grew up in Chicago. He felt that it offered everything that they were looking for. It had lots of grittiness, beautiful architecture, and the scenic lake. So they could kind of go a lot of different directions.
Well, one of us has some faulty information.
Yes. And that's not to say that Andrew Davis didn't grow up or in Chicago or something. I don't remember exactly what you said. And maybe he was able to fall back on that after Ford talked to him. But initially, he had zero plans to film in Chicago. Okay, so the chase scene in the St. Patrick's Day Parade. You touched on it earlier. So just for clarity's sake, I know we both kind of said it, but yes, the chase scene during the St. Patrick's Day Parade was actually filmed during the parade that was held that year. So if that's not cool enough for you, in addition to The Fugitive being shot during St. Patrick's Day Parade, another film, Michael Apted's, I think that's how you say his last name, Michael Apted's movie Blink, which neither of us have seen and we're not promoting or vouching for or anything like that. That film was also shot during the exact same parade. So not one, but two movies were shot in the same day, same location, same parade, and it was the actual Chicago St. Patrick's Day Parade.
That's so crazy.
It's insane. And so production managers and location managers for both films had to work together, and they worked with the parade organizers to work out the logistics. And everything went well for the most part, except the two camera crews did occasionally run into each other while shooting.
So do you think if you looked hard enough, you could see like people from the opposite set?
Oh, maybe.
In the backgrounds?
It would be a fun exercise to like go back and watch and look for that type of stuff. Or like to watch Blink, which again, I don't even know what that movie's about or
Me
if
either.
it's good or anything like that. But to watch it and see like if we could spot anything from The Fugitive in the background or anything like that. So in addition to all of that, because that's super complicated. You got to work with another film production crew, make sure that you're not getting anything from their movie and your movie, and make sure that your camera crews aren't running into each other, which sounds like they kind of did. And you have to figure all that out in the midst of an actual parade, like an actual city event for Chicago. You have to do that and work with the city planner, the parade organizers, that stuff, whatever. In addition to that, it was also very cold. The temperature that day was 21 degrees, but the real feel was -6.
Ugh.
Yes.
That is awful.
Yeah, so it was real cold that day.
I'm, for those of you who don't know, I'm a teacher, and so we go outside for recess when it's a real feel of 10 degrees, and
Right.
that is awful. So I can't imagine, and our recess is only 30 minutes long. Like I can't imagine being outside for hours on end filming in -6
Right.
degrees, and they're not wearing like
it doesn't
big
look like
puffy
anything that
jackets or
would keep them
anything.
super warm.
Yeah. That's crazy.
And then last but not least, I have that a good majority of the film was actually rewritten, typically on the spot. They would rewrite scenes right before they shot them. Director Andrew Davis says that himself, as well as Tommy Lee Jones and Harrison Ford, rewrote much of the film in this way. The actual writer who is credited with the film, or for writing the film, he was really only involved in or at least what stayed in the film that he wrote was really about, the only thing was the train wreck, and that was it. Everything else was kind of rewritten on the spot the day they were going to shoot it, which I thought was crazy.
Yeah.
But he specifically credits Jones and Ford for the entire pharmaceutical storyline. That wasn't even a part of the movie. Like the whole like corruption and like all that stuff, that was not in the film.
Yeah.
They
It was very
rewrote that.
interesting.
It was, and honestly, like I'm sure there would have been good stuff in there, and they would have figured out a good story and whatnot. But like, I can't imagine the film any other way.
Yeah,
like,
I don't know if it would be as good.
It's such a pivotal part of the movie. So,
Yeah.
I mean, kudos to them for figuring that out. Tommy Lee Jones and Harrison Ford and Andrew Davis, good on them. But anyways, that's all I actually had. So,
Okay. Well, what would you rate this movie, John?
That is a tough one, but I'm going to go with a nice 91.
Okay.
I thought the movie was, it was really solid. Very much so enjoyed this movie. I've only seen it one time now, but we watched it the other night prior to when we recorded this, and I thought it was really good. I've seen U.S. Marshals plenty of times, which I had no idea was actually like a sort of sequel to this movie. Like, it's not necessarily like a direct follow-up to this film, but it uses the same characters. Like, it's in the same universe. So I've seen that movie a handful of times, and I love that movie. Actually, we're covering The Fugitive because of that movie. One of our good friends, shout out to Dave Tillett, he recommended this movie to us, and so we're like kind of looking into it, and turns out that it was set in the same universe as U.S. Marshals, and spoiler alert, our next episode is going to be covering U.S. Marshals. So we decided we had to do it, and I really loved it. I thought it was a very, very good movie, very compelling. It holds up today. Harrison Ford is fantastic as the lead. It's a very emotional movie, and like it gets you invested. It's got lots of good action. Like, it was just very enjoyable. I thought it was well done, and I would gladly watch it again.
Yeah, I think I was going to give it a 90, but I think I'm going to copy you. I think I'm going to go 91 as well.
Okay.
I agree. It was very well done. And, I feel like a lot of the 90s movies that I've seen, I just don't really enjoy because I feel like they're cheesy, or I feel like, just stuff like that. But I really didn't have a single instance in this movie that I can remember that I thought, oh, like that kind of takes me out of it because of how like corny it is.
Right. No, and this movie very much so was when I watched it, I felt like it was an 80s movie.
Yeah.
And it was early 90s, so there's still probably a lot of that influence still impacting that. And maybe some of what you're leaning into or like that feeling is maybe just genre potentially.
Yeah, it's possible.
Because I think there are a lot of good serious movies that aren't corny or anything like that came out in the 90s. But I know exactly what you're talking about. And so, yes, this movie was fantastic. I'd like to hear you speak to it more.
I thought that the whole storyline was great. I didn't feel like there were any loose ends, and I felt like it flowed very well. Like I said before, I'm really glad because I saw a couple different things as I was researching on this movie about the possibility of, there being several love interests. Actually, Jane Lynch's character was she was scripted to be a love interest for
that doesn't surprise me,
Richard, but for the same reason I was telling you earlier, like they just thought, well, his wife did just recently die, like it would probably be a little too soon and take the audience out of it, so I'm really thankful that they didn't and that they stayed streamlined to just Richard trying to get to the bottom of his wife's murder.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I thought it was very well done, and I really enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah. One of the things that jumped out to me right away as we were watching the movie was the score for the film. Now, don't get me wrong, like, I don't think that this is one of those movies where, like, man, the score, you're not going to be talking about it, but I really noticed it. Like, I thought it was very good score. My initial thought, my immediate thought when I heard it was like, man, this sounds like the main theme for Shawshank Redemption. There were multiple instances where I heard it where I'm like, man, like I got to look into this because like I wonder if it's the same composer or what, which it's not. But there were multiple times where it's like, man, it really kind of reminds me of that vibe, which, in reality, it's kind of goes along the same lines. You have someone whose wife...
Wrongfully imprisoned.
Right, their wife is murdered, and they're wrongfully imprisoned for her murder. And, from there, the similarities basically end.
Right.
But the general premise of them is very similar. and the idea of, I guess, just like despair and depression and like so many other things that you could use to describe kind of their situations. Like the score echoes that very well, and kind of like that looming threat, and like it's felt in the score. So that jumped out to me right away. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, do you want to talk some favorite scenes?
Why don't you go first?
Okay. Well, I'll start from the top. I thought the train crash scene was crazy.
Yeah.
I really liked it. I mean, as soon as that guy started, quote unquote, getting sick and foaming at the mouth, like
Yes.
I knew.
Yeah, I knew
that
it was about
coming.
to start. Yeah.
I didn't know the train crash was coming, but I knew that they were gonna, escape.
Some sort of attempt to get out of their situation was about to happen.
But it was very, very intense. Like there's a lot going on. I'm still a little salty that the one security guard or police officer guy that, basically abandoned Richard and his partner, that he never okay, so let me backtrack here. So for those of you who haven't seen the movie, basically in the train scene, or the bus scene or whatever, there's 2 police officers and a few prisoners in a bus, and obviously the prisoners try to escape. A guy pulls out a shiv and stabs one of the police officers. Whatever. And the police officer is very injured, especially after the crash. And they're trying to get out. And the one police officer that wasn't injured is telling Richard, because he knows he's a doctor, you got to help him.
Right.
And, but then after the crash, it's kind of just, or right before the crash, I guess, he just decided every man for himself. I'm out of here. Even though Richard was saying, help me get this guy out,
Right.
So later on, there's a hospital scene where Richard is kind of disguised and he's helping out, and the police officer that got stabbed is rolled out of an ambulance on a stretcher. And I thought for sure, I was like, oh yes, like he's gonna tell somebody, because he's still alive,
Right.
that, oh, my partner completely abandoned me and Richard saved my life. But instead, we find out that he kind of turned him in. So I was just kind of bummed, because I was like, I just want that justice to be served, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, the one guy that abandoned everybody, I mean, he was a big weenie.
Yeah.
And he lied to the U.S. Marshals when they showed up, and, he was making all these false statements. I guess he was talking to the sheriffs, and then the U.S. Marshals kind of found all the plot holes in his story real quick, and then he retracted his statement and everything. But I don't know, like his character was clearly meant to be that, but that guy stunk. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, it would have been interesting, I guess, to see that play out.
I do feel like it's probably for the best that it didn't, just because it would have taken away from the main thread of the story. But yeah. So sorry, I got off track there, but
no, you're fine.
Another favorite scene of mine was, well, I guess this isn't really a scene. I really loved how it showed how smart Richard Kimble was.
Yes.
They keep referring back to it. Like several characters are talking about how smart he is throughout the movie.
Yes.
Even the guy who ended up stabbing him in the back,
Dr. Nichols.
Yeah. He even said to Tommy Lee Jones's character, you're never going to catch him. Like, he's too smart.
Yeah. To interject real quick.
Sorry.
Not to cut you off, but whenever his character was on screen or they said his name or anything like that, I could only think of Josh Nichols from Drake and Josh. Yes. I kept wanting to make jokes as we were watching, oh yeah, that's Josh's grandfather, or something like that. I don't know, but that was very much in the back of my mind.
Mine too. So yeah, I just liked how it showed just, the way that he had to figure out how to live on the run, hiding and in disguise and just basically restarting his life with nothing. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the scene when he helps the boy in the hospital. I can't remember the boy's name.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
But I just love that because it's just they had like a big influx of people in the ER and this boy's on a stretcher and his chest is really hurting. And
yeah, I don't remember. What did they say? Like, because it was a mass casualty.
I truthfully don't remember what it was.
Was there like a wreck or something, like a bus wrecked?
Yes, it was a bus. Yep,
that's
you're
what
right.
I was thinking. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was something along those lines.
Yeah, because there were like a bunch of kids.
Yes.
So yeah, I just really liked how he helped that kid, and he even realized like whatever was written on the chart, like they needed to do something else or whatever, and so he wrote something down and could have completely, I mean, he kind of did compromise himself, but like for the sake of that boy, I thought that was awesome.
I thought honestly that was probably the best scene in the whole movie.
Yeah, I would agree.
Truthfully, like the movie itself is fantastic, very much a great action thriller and everything, but kind of that I don't know that I'd call it a small moment, but just like a kind of those brief sequences of him not being on the run, and he's in, like, even though he is, but he's like not actively running, and he's kind of forced to be there, and because he's a good man, like he can't not help,
right?
And so yeah, I loved that. I love that he, like you could see the conflict where he's what are you laughing at?
I'm sorry. You just made me think of something from Impractical Jokers, but it's just
What?
Do you remember when Sal is forced to go out into like a park or whatever, and he has a big sign and it just says, "Don't stop letting people not help."
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's just that you said something about not helping, and it
popped in your mind.
It just popped in my mind.
Okay. All right. That is, yes, I do remember that. That is a good episode. Getting back on track.
So sorry.
It's okay. I like that you can see his internal struggle as he's in the hallway before he actually starts helping the little boy, where he's like talking to himself, like, look at the x-ray, and the other nurse is like too busy and he just doesn't do it, and keeps moving and like, yeah, he looks good, send him here. And then he finally actually gets to intervene a little bit because they tell him, hey, you go take him to such and such floor. And that's when he starts actively intervening. And so anyways, yes, I thought that was a phenomenal scene. That is maybe one of the best scenes in the entire movie.
I also really like just the mystery / like almost detective like work that Richard does, just like sneaking into the hospital and making a fake ID for himself and going into the prosthetics lab or whatever you'd call it, and like searching their database for the, like he like had that book about like what prosthetics,
yes,
and like was doing research, like doing all this work to try to figure out who this was that broke into his house, and had some trial and error too, because he thought he found the guy, he went and visited him in prison, and it ended up not being him, and I love when like he finally did figure out who it was that was in his house, and he broke into his apartment and called Tommy Lee Jones' character from the apartment. Like that was really cool.
That scene was awesome.
Yeah.
When, he's talking to him, and like, it was funny because all the U.S. Marshals are sitting there and they're like, oh, hey, you got a call from, Richard
Another
Kimble.
Richard
Right,
Kimble.
and they're like, oh, okay, hey, who's this? And then it actually is him, and they all start freaking out. But that sequence was great when, he's like, you remember what you told me? You told me you don't care. Well, I do. I'm solving a puzzle, and I just found a really big piece. And he doesn't hang up. He leaves it there because he's smart.
He wants them to track him.
Exactly, because he knows, and he's not going to tell him where he's at or anything, and he's going to give himself time to get away, but make them want to come there, and they figured it out for themselves. And that was a phenomenal sequence. I loved that.
Yeah, me too. And the last scene that comes to mind right now, I mean, I loved so many of them, but this was just a smaller one. But I liked the scene where so Richard is in his like new little apartment that's underneath the woman's house or whatever.
Yep.
And like they totally psych you out because he's like taking a nap, and then he wakes up and there's like cops outside like sprinting into the house, like yelling,
Yes.
And it totally psychs you out thinking, oh crap, like
right,
this is it, like
how's he gonna get out of here? And
then it ends up being the lady's son or whatever who
he was selling drugs
to minors.
Yes.
So
yep.
Yeah, but I liked that scene too, just because it kind of
it throws the audience for a loop for a moment.
Yeah.
I thought that was really good. I really liked the sequence when they're in the tunnel and he stole the ambulance and he's driving and realizes he's not getting out of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And then he ends up going down into the water drain. I don't know what the right word is.
Yeah, I don't either.
But anyways, and then Tommy Lee Jones figures it out that the grate for the water to flow into lifts up, so he jumps down there. I thought that was super cool. Just that whole sequence of them kind of like chasing through there and figuring that out, and that was just a great chain of events where he finally finds him, and Harrison Ford has his gun, or Richard Kimble, I guess, and they're kind of face to face for the first time. And that's where he's like, I didn't kill my wife. And he's like, I don't care. He doesn't believe him. He's not invested in any sort of, or maybe not invested. He's not interested in getting invested in any sort of he said, she said stuff. He's just, you're my prisoner and I'm going to get you back.
Yeah.
Like it's my job to get you back.
Yeah.
And so he's a man on a mission and he's going to get it done. And then, you can see his character thinking that he's going to do it because he's not innocent and he's not going back because he's going to prove that he's innocent. And then he ends up jumping, and that whole thing was like,
I do have to say that scene where he jumps, I can't say that I believe it, he would be dead. Like,
you never know.
I mean, you never know, but that was a long jump, and that was like some crazy intense like water.
Right. Yes.
But I mean, I don't know.
The only thing that I can say is, if he landed in the right place because of the waterfall, it's breaking the surface tension of the water.
I guess you're right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like if you're just like falling from a plane straight into the ocean, like the surface tension is going to be from a certain height. It's like hitting concrete and it'll kill you. But if that surface tension is being broken by that continuous downpour of the water, he'd maybe have a better chance. But then you're getting into like, well, now the water is really rough and like there's just a lot of variables. I'm just going to say like, you never know. He could survive, and it wasn't so outlandish to me that like it takes me out of the movie.
Right. Yeah.
So, anyways.
All right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to touch on?
Yes.
Okay.
The end of the movie. So the whole time in the film, we're building up to this like idea that it's Dr. Nichols. I actually called it while we were watching it, well before they
Yes, you
revealed
did.
it. Honestly, it was shortly after his first appearance. I was like, that's the guy. It was him. But
Like, did you think you knew it? Like when, what's his name? Richard came up to him in the car.
I didn't know it then, but I right away didn't trust him. Just he was overly eager to help him.
Yeah.
And like, sure, you could be a true friend, but why is this guy just getting introduced to us now?
Yeah, I
And
guess
why-
that's true.
You know what I mean? Like, why is he so willing without like being in a very important character later? So I don't know. I felt a little tipped off right away, not in the sense of like, oh, that's the guy right there.
Yeah.
But I didn't trust him right away. I didn't trust him completely, but I also wasn't like, oh, he's a bad dude. But as it continued to develop, I called it well before they revealed it. But anyways, the scene where Richard finally confronts him, where he's at that conference and he's just about to start giving a speech. I love just the little details in that scene. Specifically, he kind of comes barging in right when the speech is about to start. So obviously everybody's like quiet, their attention is on Dr. Nichols. They're paying attention
Right.
to what is about to happen. And as Richard walks in, like, mind you, he's not like sprinting in and yelling and doing all this stuff. His entrance is actually, maybe I should correct myself in saying barging in. He took people's attention away from Dr. Nichols, but like it was kind of a quiet entrance. But what I love about it is that he comes in and he's kind of like, he's just going right to the front.
Yeah.
And everybody turns their heads towards him.
They realize who it is.
But you can start hearing like gasps and people like whispering because they're like, oh, that's Richard Kimble. Like that's the guy, because it's a room full of physicians and everything. So, he's at least he was well respected and everybody knew him and this and that and whatever. So anyways, I thought that was just a cool, really good little detail. I appreciated that. I thought it just added to the depth. And it stuck out to me as something that was done very well in the film. I also really liked just the whole ending sequence, just that Sam and Cosmo are kind of working their way through the, I guess, construction zone. I don't know what you'd really call the top part of the building they were in, but yeah, it was kind of like under construction. And then Dr. Nichols and Richard they're all up there. They're running around doing different things. And just kind of the, I guess, quiet tension that was going on and how Dr. Nichols was taking people out and trying to get closer to getting Kimble. And then I love that Sam is like, hey, like, I'm done playing these games. Like, I'm just going to get it out in the open.
Yeah.
I know you're innocent. Let me help you.
Right.
I'm not pretending. I'm going to help you. Let's get this done, because there's a bunch of people out here who are going to eat you alive because they think you killed a cop. I thought that was really cool. And just that he was being smart. Like, Sam Gerard's character is smart. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I did too.
One scene that I kind of had mixed feelings on was was his name Coleman? I don't remember. He was the prisoner on the bus who also escaped.
I don't know if it was Coleman or not.
Well, anyways,
But I know who you're talking about.
Sam ends up killing him when they find him in the house because he has one of the people from the U.S. Marshals. One of the marshals, he's holding him hostage, and Sam ends up jumping out and shooting
Copeland.
I was close, not Coleman. Copeland. He ends up shooting Copeland, and at the risk of shooting the U.S. Marshal as well. But he just does it, and I thought it was really cool how they kind of took a moment to be quiet and have the U.S. Marshal just like, they kind of focused on, I can't think of his name, I apologize, but he was just sitting out there
Right.
by himself. And like, you could tell that he was freaked out because not only did he almost die because of Copeland, but he almost died because of his boss. Like, that's a lot to unpack, and that his boss didn't hesitate. And then I kind of had mixed feelings about how Sam responded to him.
Yeah,
You know,
I
like,
felt the same way.
You could tell that he really wanted to be like caring towards him, that he really wanted to empathize and show that like, hey, you're on my team and I care about you and I'm going to take care of you. But he also like, I didn't love his response. It kind of left a feeling in my mouth.
Yeah, like when he said, "Well, like I don't negotiate or I don't bargain or something."
Yeah, I don't bargain.
Yeah.
And so, like, it wasn't bad, but it was just one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I don't love that. But the only other thing that comes to mind that I like wanted to touch on was just I really love the relationship that they set up for Dr. Kimble and his wife. You know, I love that, like, you very much felt like they loved each other.
Yeah.
Like this, it felt like a very sincere love, that there was like a genuine aspect there. I love that we have those moments with them in the car where she's like, man, I know you hate these events, but I love it because I get to see you in a tux. Like that. I love that exchange, and how, you know, he's like, hey, break it up, guys, you know, and whatever, like at the party, and like he's coming to take, like protect her from these guys drooling over her and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, just every sequence that he got to have with his wife, I really appreciated, because I didn't feel like it was just like this ushy gushy, you know, love, like they were trying too hard to sell the relationship. I didn't feel like that. I felt like I genuinely believed the relationship. It felt like a sincere love, because, you know, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I can at least speak to us. I mean, we've been married for not quite 4 years now. We've been together for 8 years. And
8 years today.
At the time of recording. So we've been around each other for a long time, and, you know, I don't feel like real love is always like the over-the-top, ushy-gushy, you know, type love. That a lot of it is kind of the smaller moments. And I just felt like those felt very real. They felt nice, and, you know, that like she was really excited for him to get home after he was done with surgery. You know, she had the rose petals and the champagne and all that stuff, and which made the heartbreak all the worse when she was murdered.
Yeah.
So I just really enjoyed how they handled the relationship. I thought it was done very tastefully.
Yeah, I would agree.
So I think that's really all I have.
Okay.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is The Fugitive. Thank you guys for listening. It was a lot of fun to record this movie, or I guess record this episode talking about this movie. I would highly recommend it. Oh, one final thought. When I was talking about when they were upstairs, kind of in that area that was under construction, I did get Die Hard vibes.
Yeah, I could see that.
Not anything like crazy, but it was just like, oh, this, you know, the scenery kind of reminds me of Die Hard.
Yeah.
But anyways, that is The Fugitive. So thank you all for listening. It was a lot of fun to watch this movie for the first time, talk about this movie. If you enjoyed this episode, come back next week, because we're going to be talking about U.S. Marshals, which is, as I stated earlier, kind of the follow-up to this film. Not necessarily like a direct follow-up or sequel per se, but it's set in the same universe, a lot of the same characters, and I think that's fantastic. I love that movie. So if you like that movie or you enjoyed this one, make sure to come back and give it a listen.
Yes, it is not currently streaming anywhere for free, so you will have to rent it, but
it's worth it.
It's worth it.
It's a great movie. Tommy Lee Jones, Wesley Snipes, Robert Downey Jr., star-studded cast. So go check it out. Come back next week and listen to our episode where we cover it. Thank you guys.
Thanks. See you next week.
Bye.